Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the next day of our Bible study in Matthew. We are beginning chapter 26. And it's not going to be any more of the quote unquote easy chapters to deal with. This is going to be the quick road to Jesus' sacrifice on the cross and his death. The chapter starts out with Jesus at the end of his large rebuke to the Pharisees. And at the end of all that he's been speaking in the past few chapters, the end of that is Jesus saying to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man is to be handed over for crucifixion." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people were gathered together in the court of the high priest, named Caiaphas. And they plotted together to seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. They were actively plotting and planning on how they might kill him as a result of the words that he was speaking. Sound familiar to anybody? Somebody else who was recently murdered for their words? The chief priest, let's see, I can't hardly read without glasses anyway. But they were saying, not during the festival, otherwise a riot might occur among the people. Let's not seize him and kill him during the middle of this festival of the Feast of Passover, because the people might be pissed off and riot. Not because it's wrong, but because people are going to be upset. It shows where the priorities are. When Jesus was in Bethany, at the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster vial of very costly perfume. I believe it was spikenard. I'm not familiar with the perfume, but it's very expensive, very costly. And she pours it on his head as he reclines at the table. She's anointing Jesus with this extremely costly and valuable perfume. But the disciples were indignant. They are so angry and frustrated when they saw it. They're like, why was this waste? Why this waste is what it says. For this perfume might have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor. And in other Gospels, it specifically says Judas was the one that said this. Why was there this waste? For this perfume might have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor. And it gives more background to Judas, that he didn't ask this in right motives because he cared about the money. And he was the one that held the money bag, if I'm not mistaken. Things begin to get worse on Judas' part here as we continue. But Jesus says, "Why do you bother the woman? She's done a good deed to me. For you always have the poor with you. You can give to the poor whenever you want, but you do not always have me. I'm going to be crucified in 2 days. You can give to the poor whenever. You do not always have me. For when she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial." Truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be spoken of in memory of her. How about that for fulfillment of prophecy? It certainly has been spoken of her for a long, long time. One of the 12, named Judas Iscariot, he went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me to betray him, Jesus, to you?" They weigh out 30 pieces of silver to him. And from then on, he began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus. Now, on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover?" Jesus says, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I am to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" The disciples did as Jesus directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When evening was come, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12 disciples, and as they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you that one of you will betray me." And now, being deeply grieved, they each one began to say to him, "Surely not I, Lord." "Jesus, it's not me, is it? It's not me. Jesus, not me." Jesus says, "He who dipped his hand with me in the bowl is the one who will betray me. The Son of Man is to go just as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born." And Judas, who was betraying him, who had just gone to wager the 30 pieces of silver from the chief priests as a means of payment for his betraying Jesus to them, Judas says, "Surely it is not I, Rabbi?" ? And Jesus says, "You have said it yourself." Why did Judas even say it? I wonder if he was just saving face or an attempt at saving face. What did the disciples think of Jesus' response to Judas? "You have said it yourself." I don't know. While they were eating, Jesus took some bread, and after a blessing, he broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." When he had taken a cup and given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. For this is Judas as well, I assume. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for forgiveness of sins. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night." These people that have been following him through thick and thin, and through times of famine and times of plenty, in times of unsurety and in times of intense miracles, these people that have been following through all of it, he says, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike down the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." He's telling them plainly, but I'm not sure they understand. But Peter said to him, "Even though all may fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Peter still impassioned as ever, even when Jesus said to him, "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship," that's not what it said, "For you have the interest of men, not the interest of God," something more like that. Peter says, "Even if I have to die with you." No, Jesus responds first. "Truly I say to you that this very night before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." This very night. Jesus says, "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." All the disciples said the same thing too. They all were in agreement. One When I was in college, in my psychology classes, I had one psychology teacher, and she had input that was very valid of this. There's so many people and so many of us that are convinced of what we'll do in some situation, but in truth, we probably not one of us truly can say what we would do until we're faced with the scenario. And yet all the disciples are coming to this conclusion that they're convinced and they're committed that they will all go to the death with Christ and not deny him. Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane. Well, the point of that being they all deny him. Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray. Just sit here. I'm going to go over a little ways and I'm going to pray. I'm going to separate myself a bit so that I can try and be in connection with God through this difficult time." And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee. If I remember right, that's James and John. Could be wrong, but I think that's right. And began to be grieved and distressed. He said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me. Stay here with me." Jesus wanted Peter and, if I'm right, James and John to stay there with him. Keep watch. And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Jesus didn't want to make the sacrifice. I should rephrase that. Jesus didn't want to go through the pain, it would seem, and the struggle and the intense horror that he must have gone through when hanging on a cross. He wasn't just hanging on a cross, but bearing the sins of the world. Every sin that has ever been committed in the past and every sin that has ever been committed in the future. He didn't want to bear the pain that was associated with that weight, and prayed that if it was possible, that that cup would pass from him, and yet subjected himself to God's will. And I'm thankful that he did. And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. Oh man. Let me put this back up. He came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, "So you men could not keep watch with me for 1 hour. Keep watching and praying that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." How many of us can relate to that? Where, like it says in Romans, where that which we want to do, we don't do, but that which we don't want to do, we do. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Jesus goes again away the second time, saying, "My Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, your will be done." If there's no other way for this to happen, unless I drink this cup, unless I accept this fate, your will be done. He comes back and finds the disciples sleeping again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them again and went and prayed a third time, saying the same thing again once more. came back to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand. The time is now." While he was still speaking, while he was still telling them, the time is now, it is happening right now, Judas, one of the 12, came up, accompanied by a large crowd with swords and clubs, who came from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now he who was betraying him gave them a sign, saying, "Whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him." Immediately Judas went to Jesus and said, "Hail, Rabbi," and kissed him. Even played the part of worship. And Jesus says, "Friend, do what you have come for." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who was with Jesus, Peter, in other Gospels we know it's Peter, reached and drew out his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all those who take up the sword shall perish by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? How then will the scriptures be fulfilled, which say that it must happen this way?" Jesus is willfully giving himself up, despite having intense power to the contrary via God. I don't see it saying it here, but in other Gospels it talks about Jesus healing that servant, putting that ear back and healing that servant, performing a miracle to the people that are literally taking him to his crucifixion. At that time Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as you would against a robber? Every day I used to sit in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place to fulfill the scriptures of the prophets." Excuse me. And then all the disciples left him and fled. I have a fair amount of the chapter left. I think I'm going to leave it there. We'll start back off at 57. I appreciate you very much for watching, and I hope that there was some value to be gained through this. And I'll see you tomorrow for the next one. Thank you for watching.